getting people out to vote, um, letting them know that they are owners, they are member owners. You do have a voice, you do have a say so in how your electric cooperative operates, but that information is withheld from them, and so a lot of them do not know. So we're working on really just mass education campaigns. um, we also run people for the board of directors, but a lot of the times they find ways to suppress the vote and to make sure that the new candidates do not get elected. So it's always the incumbents getting reelected over and over and over again. And it's really sad because out of 26 electric cooperatives worth over $1 billion collectively, they are the biggest contributor to political campaigns. And so they service primarily African American communities. And for the communities that we're in contact with, a lot of them do not vote Republican. Southern Echo is a nonpartisan, nonprofit. We don't tell you who to vote for. We just educate. However, a lot of these individuals are not voting Republican, um, but their money is always goes to the Republican candidate, and they did not realize. So when I revealed this information to them, and I'm like, hey, did you know that your 26 electric cooperatives formed a lobbying arm and they all send money to it? So that commercial you saw, that billboard you saw, that radio ad you heard when you were driving down the street, you paid for it and you had no idea. So you're paying for those things, and you're paying bills that are $700 to $800 with reconnect fees that are just as high. And these are senior citizens, fixed incomes, and you think about what they're giving up to keep the lights on. And it's enough to bring tears to your eyes, because you go meet people in their homes. I'm very big on community organizing. We'll have meetings in people's houses, on their front porches, in the church, and honestly, the stories that you hear, they will break you down, right? Like the bill, like I've heard some stories about the bills released on Tuesday. The next thing you know, somebody's knocking on your door on Wednesday saying, if you don't pay by the end of the day, we're going to disconnect you. Knowing very well that it means that's $700-$800 reconnection, right? There's Electric Cooperative in Mississippi that actually has prepaid electricity. And they are saying that any new I can't even call them member owners, because they're saying that if you're new to getting electricity, you are no longer a member owner. Don't know how they're getting away with it.
Sure.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There, as far as transparency and accountable governance in Mississippi, that's not a thing. So we all look to Roanoke Electric as the best practice model, and AEO was able to take a delegation to the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association's convening in February of last year. We got to meet Curtis Wynn, who was the first African American board chair for NRECA, who's 10 years up, I think now. But he's awesome. But he was able to host a diversity and inclusion kind of cocktail hour for us, which was really awesome for the member owners that we brought along with us. And just to hear his vision for all of the electric cooperatives, right, as well as for Roanoke. But then in the backdrop, to be a part of some of those sessions with the board of directors and hear what they were saying behind the scene. Like, you don't have to actually be transparent, you just have to appear to be transparent. That's literally what they told a room full of hundreds of board of directors from all over the nation. You don't have to be transparent, you just give them enough so they don't ask questions. So that was interesting to be on the other side of that, to know that for many of them, it is very much strategic, very much on purpose. And so it's not a race issue anymore, it's a class issue. It's very expensive to be poor. There are people waiting. Sorry, look. Y'all don't let me keep talking like that, because then people just be waiting, trying to get in the So I think I lost one person. They were trying to get in. I'm just talking, but it is very expensive to be poor. And I'm going to take a step back and let someone else talk now. So Jill or anyone?
I will mention that I've got some videos of Curtis Wynn talking in my slide decks that I dropped in the chat. I'll put it back just in case if new people like who just joined can't see the chat. I'm not sure. But like the very last slide, you'll see a picture of Curtis Wynn and his address to the Congressional Hill. He got to talk to, all kinds of congressmen, senators on his program, and especially like the balance sheet after doing pay as you say program, so he could show them the business case. Because when you're dealing with people like what Benita's talking about, like they're pretty much intentionally misleading people. I guess the only way you can get to them at that point is say, you're losing money if you don't do this. It's actually going to be, it's going to hurt you if you don't, in the balance sheet side of things. And so he's got some good slides on showing like everything he loses, like in the red when he does energy burden relief, but then everything he gains money wise and how it offsets. And he speaks real well about it. And there's also a picture of him on slide 11 in the cowboy hat with his new EV program, because they've expanded their program from just the traditional energy efficiency, your insulation, your HVAC replacement, to like demand response stuff, so smart thermostats, but now to the EV bidirectional vehicle to grid kind of chargers, which is all the sexy new things that would make any co-op board go like, oh, what, like selling more electrons. So that's like a really great way to say, hey, look at this video and look at their balance sheet, look at what it's done for them, and also go talk to them about the business case. If you can't talk to them about the like high burdens, the high bill complaint calls, the disconnection rates, all that. So check out those videos for sure. And there's also, I think, what slide is it? Just slide on member owner testimonies too. If you do happen to have a co-op that does listen to people's stories and not just the money story, slide 10 has 3 videos of the member owner testimonies. And one of them is in Arkansas. I don't know if y'all have heard of Ouachita Electric Cooperative in Arkansas, but Mark Casey is kind of like a Curtis Wynn figure. His co-op had different issues, not as many mobile homes, but a lot of limited income, elderly folk, like really, really poor area. And like one factory that was going to leave, so like a big employer, and he's deployed solar with pays, and they actually got they told their Arkansas commission, I'm requesting a 4.5% rate decrease for everybody, just because of my participants in my pays energy efficiency and solar program. So talk about benefits for everybody, right? So that's Ouachita. You can see a video on that one. Kentucky, I also have a video on testimonials from this coal country kind of community, people who were, literally losing their homes, or they're falling apart and they're not comfortable at all. The bills are like insane for how tiny footprint they are, and how the PAYS program works there. And then I also have a video from the Roanoke program that Benita was talking about. So I don't know if any of these touch points here on the slide would be useful, but if y'all want to, feel free to share these slides wherever, if you feel like your audience needs to see it. Or ask for more, like we'll make bespoke kind of slide decks sometimes. If someone says, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, my co-op cares about this, but not about this. They want this, but that's a trigger. Like we can make a deck that explains pays, maybe through a video, got a couple of videos in there too, about how the investment works and how it gets repaid and all that. But then leaving out all the stuff that might be a trigger. Like we can work with you on that if you get to that point where you know your audience enough that you want a tailored slide deck.
That's really awesome. Thank you so much, Jill. Any questions so far? Any comments? Anything? No. Jill gave so much great information. I do want to just add on. I love piggybacking because everyone, when someone speaks, it always like, oh, that part. And I know Maya, you were talking about, you guys were in the conversation around, maybe starting an electric co-op or something like that, some type of municipal or something like that. So that, we have municipal owned utilities, and you have co-ops, and you have investor owned utilities. But we won't go to that part. But I want to talk about the benefits of electric cooperatives. One of the main benefits being a source of economic development, job creation as well. because number one, they should employ, right, people from within the community, right? Because we're talking about the multiplier effect. So they should employ people from within the community. They're buying, they're buying goods and services within the community as well. The employees spend their money in the community. Um, and those businesses are benefiting from that. They also spend the money within the community, and that's the way it should work. We have a direct impact through the business and the employees. We have an indirect impact when we're looking at, the financial side of it, of how the other local businesses use their funds as a result of getting business from the electric cooperative or the whatever utility it is. And then you have this induced impact when you're talking about the employees and business owners and others just kind of using their money within the community. And so, I always talk to people about this, about creating sustainable communities. If we can find a way to keep the money within our community, number one, we're increasing the tax base, right? So we're bringing in revenue to, better the roads, better the education, throw more money at the schools. Increase the infrastructure. If it's water, if it's broadband, bring better services to our communities. Because in the rural parts of Mississippi, what we're dealing with is a lot of people don't have access to internet. Their sole source of internet are their smartphones, and they're using them as hotspots, which is unacceptable, especially during a zombie apocalyptic time, right? When we're doing a lot of virtual school. So they're trying to do virtual school using hotspots on cell phones. Think how hard that is. But there's so much potential that electric cooperatives can offer to the community, and I just hope that they can all live up to their full potential, like Roanoke Electric. Even when they have this, and I forget the name of it, but I love it when they plant trees and they're trying to conserve the land mass, right? From people cutting down trees and doing harm to the local area and the community. So I just love Roanoke Electric for so many different reasons. So if you ever just want inspiration or just want to see things, I know I highly suggest to go to their website. Have a look around, look at the programs they offer to their member owners, how they give back to the community. That's very, very important. And then you can look up other electric cooperatives. I say look up any cooperative in Mississippi, and you're going to see a vast difference. Number one, in the website, which is a transparency issue. There is, for most of the website, is just a landing page. Here's a number you can call. And it's awesome. It's so weird because some of them are saying, hey, we want you to pay your bills online. But we just, what I just said is a lot of them lack access to internet. So if you come in the office to pay your bill, there's an extra fee tagged on top of it. So they want to charge you a fee to pay your bill in person because they want you to use the internet. But no one has built out the infrastructure to offer internet access, broadband or high speed anything. No one has built that out in the rural parts of Mississippi. So it's
and I know like one thing, once you see the value of the demand response programs, what you need broadband for, right? Smart thermostats, shift and load with your little water heater, load controllers. Once the co-op gets to see the numbers on that, what's their return, being able to optimize when they shift things around, it's like, oh, if I did expand broadband to everybody and I gave the thermostats and the water heater load control switches to everybody, this would be a huge money maker for me. And that's something that Roanoke is doing, is deploying broadband as they go. So it's like smart home package is like broadband connection and energy efficiency measures, so we can get everybody participating in these programs all at one time. But then, it takes a lot of time and effort. Co-ops are usually really small and anyway, like staff wise. So getting like a loan from the government, which there's a lot of programs right now for low interest on deploying broadband, but still, getting that loan and like actually deploying the fiber while you're doing it can take a lot of their time. So you could just kind of got to keep the co-op focused on like If you just do broadband because that's a profit center for you, you're missing out on all the other future profit centers, like combining it with demand response and combining it with electrification. But that is one thing that y'all should definitely, if you are working with your co-op right now, trying to get them to do anything upgrading home wise, you should come to us for these Mad Lib style USDA applications, because RESP, the all this USDA money out there for co-ops, like the Rural Energy Savings Program, RESP, and the Energy Efficiency Conservation Loan Program, ECLIP, are both templated like now, because like between Holmes, working with Roanoke and other people, we've just like taken the successful ones at my org and we just like took out everybody's name and made like a Mad Lib. So it's like a successful pay as you save application for RESP, a successful one for ECLIP, and then you just fill in the name of your co-op and like sign it, and like, box of measures that you're going to do, because everybody wants to do different, maybe they just want to do energy efficiency, air sealing, HVAC, maybe they want to do other measures, maybe they want to add broadband in there, and then turn it in, and it's literally like, the USDA is not that technically rigorous. Like they're not going to be going through like, does everything add up? They're just kind of like stamped, yes, 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 because the money is undersubscribed and they want to get more money from Congress next year. So they need to get it all out the door. So that's one thing that you really do have as like kind of on your side. You go to that co-op and you say, hey, look, we got it filled out for you. You just got to sign it. And it's for $5 million, $10 million, whatever their balance sheet can hold. 0% interest. So nothing on you, no cost to do it, 0% interest, and you don't have to pay back for 10 years. So things like that can really show that I'm serious. You don't have to get the money. We got the money coming to you. That really helps them get to the table. Like, oh, I can, invest in broadband fiber to the home, as well as all these other packages. And with that kind of logic, you just say, well, as long as you got someone in the home, you might as well do the air sealing, the HVAC replacement, see if their roof is good enough for solar, all those in one, just so you take advantage of the chuck roll. So you got a very logical argument then to walk them toward a layered project deployment, instead of like all these piecemeal, like we got a broadband program and we got a smart home program and we got an energy efficiency program. And nope, stack them together because USDA will finance it that way. I wish that more of them knew about that.
Yeah, and Jill, I actually have a quick question. I don't, this is me wondering, I wonder how I could approach a board in Mississippi and say, hey, it's simple. What could we do to turn the tides? Even though we can't get any type of diversity on the board of directors yet, we're working on it. What could we do in the meantime to get them to embrace these type of programs? And because
I've dealt with like the co-ops that aren't so friendly, which I would categorize that as, like it's not a Roanoke with the Curtis Wynn who's already like, I understand why we need to do this, so what do we do? They're not coming to the conversation that way. They're like, what is this? I've dealt with a couple of those. And the main thing you got to do there is figure out like just one contact. Like maybe it's not like the highest up contact. Maybe it's like the person whose name is listed as like the energy efficiency manager or something. And if you can develop any kind of rapport with that person, where you just give them a quick like, hey, look at what someone else is doing, like a peer level. Like if this is a white guy, like get another white guy, and just say, like for instance, when we were talking to this Kansas co-op, it's like, okay, I'm going to show you an example of like a Missouri, because I know they have like a competitor thing, Kansas, Missouri going on. So like if you can talk to Kansas about what Missouri people are already doing and vice versa, then you can kind of push them along, saying like, they've been doing this for 10 years. They've been investing in home upgrades using the PAY system, and they financed it all with 0% interest USDA loans. You should call this white guy up because he's doing it for their co-op. And then they're like, oh, okay, maybe, and they give that guy a call, and then it sounds like it's real because they did it. And then they might ask you, or at least they would ask us for like, okay, give us another slide on, here's like our list of questions. We invite them to like email us all their questions. And then we just make a slide deck that answers each of those questions. And a lot of those questions are kind of like what I would call trying to stall, or like false complaints, like things that really aren't problems, but they're elevating them. Like, well, our billing system is really old and we're, not going to be able to pay for a billing system update. And that's what's going to be necessary for this pays thing, because you're going to have a tariff added to everybody's bill. And that adding a charge is going to be expensive for our accounting system. So then we just simply go to the network of co-ops and we say, can you give us a price quote on what it costs you to do it? Because y'all all use like what, 2-3 of the same vendors to do billing. So we give them the real facts on it, like, okay, it costs you guys like what, 25K, and it's a module that's already built. So you didn't have to do any of the work, you just have to buy it. And that money will be offset anyway by the savings. So here's your answer, So I would say, like, if you're working with a specific co-op and you've got like one point of contact, just build that deck that shows them somebody like them that's doing it, and try to get them to talk. And just invite them to poke holes. Any questions they have, you can contact any of us to answer them and throw it back at them, and keep it going. And eventually, once you've answered everything they've asked, they're like, okay, give us your big presentation. Like, we want you to dive into our spreadsheets and show us how it's really going to work for our pricing structure. Because they'll always say that too, every co-op, you've seen one. We all have a different pricing structure. We all, with our G&Ts, like, what worked for them might not have worked for us because of our kilowatt hours, or whatever, however we buy it wholesale, or like whatever our unique situation is. So if you can get them interested enough to open up to show like their pricing structure, then I think you can find a way to make it work for them, get their board to vote on a tariff. I mean, other co-ops have done that whole process in like 4 months. So once you get them to the table, it shouldn't take that long, to get through the real data and the specs of it. Yeah.
And one other concern I have, especially in Mississippi, is the net metering laws that we have. So legislation, for us in Mississippi, number one, solar panels and those, things, any type of, renewable energy, anything for us is very expensive. It's a lot of out-of-pocket costs up front. And then the legislation that they passed is basically, we can give back to the grid, up to zero. After that point, it's just like you're just giving it away for free. So a lot of people are like, why would I pay all this money? So in Mississippi, the legislation and regulations that we deal with are not favorable for people to embrace these.
It's also like that in places even where they have net metering, pay as you save system for solar is limited even still for other co-ops, because the tax credit is not a direct pay, and it's not for 501c type organizations. Like, it's disallowed, so you can't even use that and factor that into your payment or the upfront cost of the solar, which then usually makes it out of reach. And so I know people are lobbying hardcore to turn the tax credit, the solar tax credit, into a direct pay, and to make it optional for 501cs so that a nonprofit could use it. But that's been the main limit to solar, like even in places where they do have net metering. It's like, well, it's so close to penciling out. And if they could get that tax credit up front to include in it, it would pencil out. So that's like one thing we're waiting on. But I still think the logic of like every single utility, like co-op, muni, and IOU already has this tariff authority thing, which I didn't really understand at first. Like this idea that, I guess when I was earlier in the whole like climate field, I was like, we just need to change all utility incentive structures, right? Like we got to do an overhaul of like the whole system. And this was a huge relief to like find out that maybe not, because they all have tariff authority, which just means what they do right now. Like they invest in energy infrastructure and then they recoup their costs like on a tariff on the bill. And instead of saying, oh, now you need to like act like a bank and finance stuff for us, you just use that tariff authority. You invest in our home upgrade and then you recoup the cost because we made your whole system less costly to operate. You're just doing what you normally do. So it's business as usual. We didn't have to change anything. We didn't have to get regulatory approval. Your board just has to vote. So it's like this huge, like, like instead of investing in traditional power plants, you guys could just invest in homes as the kind of virtual future power plant and operate them that way, shift the load. And once they, see that kind of opportunity, like, oh, like this is what I already know how to do. It is what I do. I don't have to like learn what the loan program, check people's income, operate like a bank. Like now I have to be beholden to federal consumer laws. Like you don't have to. You're just doing the thing you already do. You just have to think about it a little differently. Like instead of wires and poles, it's people's homes. And so the idea of getting them thinking about that and just doing that, even if they can't do solar, like, hey, look, I used my tariff authority to invest in someone's insulation and in somebody's air sealing so that when like a Texas storm hit, their homes held the heat better and no one died. So, like those kinds of, get them used to the mechanism. By the time they're doing, thousands and thousands of homes using the PAYS system, then I'm sure net metering will be a thing in Mississippi. The tax credit will be a direct pay. And then they can just say, oh, I'll just layer the solar on all the homes that I've already got PAYS programs in, because those people are really used to the PAYS charge in the bill. They're not scared of it. So sometimes it's just getting them playing with anything to get you in the door, like, are they interested in buses? That's why Holmes is working on PAYS for transportation. It's because some co-ops or utilities just wouldn't listen to the whole home thing. It's like there's too many homes, they're snowflakes, they're all, different, unique, and spread out. I want to do like industry and transportation, those big consumer classes. And so Holmes has been working on like, okay, well, if that's where you want to start talking, then let's talk about converting your buses from diesel to electric. And let's figure out how PAYS can help with that. And so you just kind of got to know like, what's that one thing that they really care about? And then get them to do PAYS for that one thing. And then once they're like trusting it and they're like so comfortable with the mechanism, you can add on so many other things. I've just been neglecting the chat. Hold on, I gotta catch up. Oh, wow.
Let's see. While we're going through the chat, is anything anybody want to ask or say? Please come off mute. It's a small group in here. We're all family now.
Hey, I came in late, I think. I was just trying to figure out how to get in here for like a long time, so.
No worries.
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
Thanks. This was just the luck of the draw. I clicked on the first one I saw and I was like, that one. But yeah, I'm totally passionate about utilities. I took a class on environmental studies, and so there was a lot about utilities in there. So it's interesting to hear more about the process. I was just typing in there like, soon politicians will be lobbying for like who can spend the most money to help clean up the environment and like restore the impoverished areas, and like it'll become a trend like French bulldogs. That's what I was gonna write, but I left that part out because I'm getting a Frenchie.
I mean, yeah, I think a part of that for sure, like, for instance, right now, I kind of think of, and I think a lot of people think of their utility as like the bad guy, right, in the story, the antagonist in the story. And the future that I really think that they can walk into if they want to is being the protagonist, because they could be the little local economic engine, because the whole US is already split up into their own little territories, right? We've given all 4,000 of them a little area to deal with, to handle all on their own. And so if each one of those 4,000 utilities were to see their role as like, oh, I think Bedina was talking about this earlier, like every little cent I invest in my infrastructure here goes into my local economy. And so it's like an average of $7,500 to do an energy efficiency retrofit. So you do 1,000 homes and you just invested like $7.5 million into your local economy, into the type of workforce that you can only get locally. Like you cannot export contractors, So the idea that that 4,000 utilities can be these little economic power engines for their community is a real thing, because they, each one of them's got hundreds of thousands of homes, businesses, industries that they need to do energy efficiency, lighting, and for real deep decarbonization, like 100%, we need to do complete electrification, right? Switch everybody off gas, and we need chargers. Like, that's a lot that they need to deploy, and they have to deploy locally. And if all 4,000 utilities are doing it, you can only really hire people that are local to do that work. And so, I mean, that's kind of the future state that we don't see now, because people are mistrusting of their utility for good reason. But they could transform themselves into a hero brand where we're all like, oh, that's why we like you. Like, you have all this unlimited capital. That's low cost capital. None of us have money to do this, but you do. And magically, you're able to recoup that capital. Like, you spend it and you just get it back through what we pay, and through all the stuff you earn on it, and like all the return on investments. Like, you just magically get it back. And especially the regulated, IOUs, they get a rate of return on top. So guaranteed, like 10%. So that whole idea of like just spend is what they've always done. Like, oh, we need a new nuclear plant. Like, I guess it'll be $1 billion that I need to get 10% back on. Like all that 10 billion plus 10%. So why don't we just start shifting that money into stuff that will help people, right? So more distributed energy stuff. And I really think that could happen. Like, and then, yeah, we would really be kind of comparing, like, well, my utility paid for everything in my house to be net zero. And like,
Yeah.
That's what I hope.
I cannot wait till we get to that point. Like, that's going to be the most amazing. Well, my cooperative is better than yours.
Yeah.
I love those types of conversations, because right now we're dealing with, my bill is too high, but, I'm going back to even like the housing stock when we're looking at rural parts, we're looking at drafty windows, drafty doors. I mean, I've seen people literally with cardboard on their windows, for the windows. That is their window. There is no glass. Floors that are caving in, roofs that are caving in, and this is what, kind of the reality is in Mississippi, and, trying to get people to understand that, hey, go out and vote. Go out and tell your electric cooperative, this is what you want. This is the change that you want to see. You have to hold them accountable in order to get things like pays implemented at your local electric cooperative. Like, you have to push them. They're not looking towards the future. They're looking at the here and now. They're looking at, how can I pad my pocket right now, right here? Right. Because I'm all into financial analysis. So when I'm looking at the average, there's the little Jack, you hear him. When you compare it, when I look at the 990s, and I'm looking at how much, the highest paid employees are getting paid, key employees, even the board of directors, or how much they're getting paid, right? Mississippi on average, we already make 22% less in our average income than in the nation, off the top, even in the capital. And then we go to rural parts of Mississippi, and you'll see an office manager making $180,000, and the average income is what, 25,000. And then you wonder why they're hiring friends and family. You don't see, they're not hiring. It's very almost like, hey, we're related. I'm gonna hire you. I don't need a resume. Yeah. You don't need any skills. I'll hire you. Those are the people that know about the lineman jobs. Because I feel like when some of my cousins, most of my family, they are member owners. We never knew what that meant before I got involved. And one day I was kind of doing a drive around, meeting with different member owners, meeting with mayors and different things like that, to talk about the state of their electric cooperatives and the state of their communities. And so it was interesting to see that even the mayors didn't understand that, they were member owners, right? The city was a member owner. You can demand, you have a voice, you have a voice to demand the change that you want to see in your community, but the key to that is education. We have to make sure the member owners and the communities know that they are a member owner. Two, what the roles and rights are of a member owner and what the board of directors should be doing. It's very much, my father always taught me that the easiest way to manipulate a group of people is to keep them uneducated.
Mhm.
And so I'm very big on making sure I share as much information that I have. We don't believe in gatekeepers, and also providing that information to meet people where they are. That's very important because not everybody is, a PhD level. I know I'm not, so you have to find a way to give people that information in a way that they can digest and understand and make
Mhm.
an informed decision, and that's what we see. And so that's what we're trying to do when we go into communities. And you also have to realize whenever you go into a community, because in Southern Echo, we're 30 years old. We turned 30 last December, actually. One of our founders was a one of the co-founders of SNCC. He was a freedom rider. And so we learned how to do community organizing from him. His name is Hollis Watkins Muhammad. He was actually on death row for around 98 days for his sit-ins and things like that. So you can actually look him up and see. FBI kept files on him, very close files on him to see what he was doing, what he was up to. He was from Macomb, Mississippi, Pike County, getting his electricity from Magnolia EPA. And so whereas a lot of my family get their electricity from as well. And I always think about back in the day, if members of the Black and Brown community had the ability to even vote, even at their local electric cooperative level, how things would be different now. Like, what would life look like now in those communities? Just the possibilities. And we'll never be able to calculate, the loss of opportunity there, right? It spans across generations. You were about to say something, Joshua?
Did you say McDowell County?
Magnolia. It was actually
Magnolia.
Magnolia is the name of the EPA. It's Pike County. They service about 7 or 8 different electric cooperatives. What is one thing that's also very interesting when you look at the electric cooperatives in Mississippi, and y'all, I love Mississippi, so I'm all about, that's where you're going to hear me draw a lot of my stuff from. But if you ever pull up a state map and look at how the IOUs, MOUs, and electric cooperatives have kind of divvied out the service areas, you're going to see a lot of the lower income areas are serviced by electric cooperatives.
Mm.
It is so bad to where they will go down the middle of a street, right? And your neighbor can be with the IOU and you'll be with the electric cooperative. It is as crazy as that.
Yeah.
Never seen very much like it. And we're losing people. People are leaving me. I have like separation issues. People can't leave me.
Oh, I did see there was a question in the chat that like I get all the time because it sounds so similar, seriously. And I had the same question, like pace and pays. Yes, we need to come up with another name. But okay, property assessed clean energy PACE is when you use your taxes, you like tack on the upgrade to the taxes and you're like financing it annually on your taxes. And so the thing that doesn't allow is for people who like maybe don't make enough to even pay taxes, right? Or the other consumer protection issue there is if you are at all late on that payment, it's subject to the same type of interest charges as taxes are, which are quite high. Like they can be like 30% in some states. So like you miss your taxes on time and you just missed your PACE payment, then that's really, really high. Also, even if you don't miss your PACE payment, there is an interest rate attached to property assessed clean energy just by itself. And it's usually around 7%, which we know right now interest rates are like what, 1.5. So like that's way higher. And the reason that it is, I mean, we first got to back up and say like people started property assessed clean energy to overcome the upfront cost barrier. You can use your taxes to repay things, but it was good intentions. but it did not solve all the issues. And so sometimes the good people who are fighting for stuff just need to, kind of come around and say, like, this thing didn't solve all the issues like we thought it would. We need to leave it behind. And that's what's kind of happened in the last 2 years. So like California, the largest market for energy efficiency, LA County shut out pays, made it like basically illegal because of these consumer protection issues. There was a lot of fraud. The programs were, doing like the contractor fraud thing is always an issue with any program, no matter what. But their just interest was being like tacked on to the point that like people weren't being told that that's what it was. And it was really bankrupt people. And there was these really bad stories of grandmas getting ripped off. And so a lot of markets just kind of closed it, and it kind of cascaded this into a bankruptcy of all the financial institutions that really liked PACE because they were getting 7% interest, which is like a good gig, right? So PACE fell just in like the last year. There's been the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau federally is investigating it for all its consumer protection issues. So pay as you save is not using the tax mechanism. All it's doing is saying the utilities are making an investment and this isn't financing. So it has nothing to do with the individual or their taxes, whether they do or don't file taxes, nothing to do with that. It's just about the structure itself. So like, I don't care who lives there. I don't care about the person. I'm looking at the building and what's the savings potential of the building. So like, if I can replace some stuff, add some stuff, like what savings will I get the next year? Well, then that's how much money I can spend, that year. So how many savings can I get over the next 12 years? Well, that's how much I could spend in that home cost effectively right now, and then recoup that cost over the next 12 years and without having to do anything. No one had to pay for anything. And so it's very different financing thing. And people in the pays field don't even call it financing, because financing it kind of like denotes that like person who's like lending and the person who's borrowing, and that's a financing transaction. And that's not at all what's happening in pays. It's just like the person is not even in it. It's just like the utility comes to the structure and is like, okay, where are you leaking? Where's the infrared really red? Where's the, it's just like what's happening at the structure, what's the savings potential at the structure. So very, very different, but it makes it difficult to talk about for sure because of the PACE association. And also because in the timing before pay as you save it's still not a very well-known term. It's not very sexy. It's not everywhere, but you might have heard of like on bill solutions or like tariffed on bill or whatever. That used to be like the umbrella term for a pay as you save like program, but the more generic version was like tariffed on bill, because they'll put a charge on your bill and you'll pay back on the bill. That's also, people the pays field don't like to use it because anything on bill makes it sound like it's some kind of loan thing, because most like on bill loans are repaid that way. So we've had a real hard time if you're just starting off talking with the co-op, getting over the hurdle of like, this isn't a loan. This is not a loan. Like we almost have to start off every conversation with like, we have this whole table. I should have shared it in the link. I'll share it on the slide deck later since you have the link to it. But it's like, here's what pays is in a table compared to PACE, compared to loans. Because it like I have had 6 months of technical assistance with the co-op manager, and you still get like, well, then the loan, what's the interest on? And you're like, there isn't a loan. Like, it's been that long, and that's still a hurdle. And it's mostly because of all these other things that are so popular, like PACE, popular because the banks loved it. And then on bill loans, again, popular because banks and lenders love it. Really hard to combat that. Like, it's not a loan, it's not financing. Such a struggle. Like, you should not underestimate the language aspect. Only recently, like in the last week, we were talking to the EPA about like updating their finance tool with new terminology, and that they should really remove on bill. They shouldn't have on bill loans and tariff stuff in the same category. They're not the same at all. They should be separate. And they ended up picking a whole different term called inclusive utility investment instead of on-bill tariff, because that sounds a lot more like, okay, inclusive, which means it's for everybody, it's for all. Utility investment, which is really what it is. It's not financing, it's the utility just investing in your home. So hopefully that new umbrella term will be less confusing, but we'll still say pays when we're referring to the specific system of inclusive utility investment that has its trademarked consumer protections and IP documents that are public and like mostly for free, but you can, like the contracts you can purchase or license, but you don't have to run a program. But yeah, the language aspect, the taxonomy of the whole thing, a real barrier. So if you're going to talk about this to a co-op, like run your slides by us and we'll, we can help remove anything that we think might trip people up.
Just saw a question from Maya about what are the ways that you see youth getting involved in energy democracy projects, since most youth most youth don't own homes or pay utility bills yet. That is a very real thing, right? I see it two ways. Because even right now in this day and age, we see youth leading they're on the forefront on just Black Lives Matter, even if they can't vote, right? It doesn't matter if they can vote or they can't. They're out there pushing, they're out there getting the word out. Like that's very important, right? Because if you start them out young, my daughter is 12, taller than me, but she is very well versed on politics. We don't see eye to eye on some things when it comes to politics. We have whole conversations about what we don't agree about. Even when it comes down to particular candidates and their platforms, we literally get down to that. And she's 12, and it started well before 12. But the important thing is to educate them on why this is important, how it would impact their current state and their future state, right? How it impacts the environment. That's just on the advocacy side, to get them involved in campaigns to hold not only politicians accountable, but even their local politicians, even their electric cooperatives, even the officers or just employees of IOUs and MOUs. We're not going to exclude anybody. Hold them accountable, give them the education so they can hold people accountable. That's on that side. On the other side, I see jobs. When I was younger, we didn't hear, number one, lineman. No one ever said, I want to grow up and be a lineman. We didn't hear that, right? We still don't hear that. We don't hear a lot of people talking about, we hear people talk about entrepreneurship, right? Let's say we could get some youth who graduated from high school, BPI and ResNet certified, right? Go out and do energy efficient audits on old houses, on new houses. Work with a local construction company that is also owned by someone in the community, right? Think about the potential that they could see as far as giving back to the community, economic development. There's so many ways. And then just even having once you pique a young person's interest in certain things, they always take it further, right? So think about if we pique their interest now, they would want to get involved in jobs that include, solar and different things, and trying to find a way to bring that back to their community. So, my biggest
echo
thing,
that, because
yeah,
I just heard a story today that reminded me, you don't have to invest with your money to be invested. Like time can really make you invested too.
Yeah.
And I learned that from this person whose son, I think at the age of 12, said that he wanted to go solar after watching the Inconvenient Truth documentary. And this was like years ago up in DC. His mom was like working in philanthropy and like she cared about the environment, but like wasn't really doing that much. And the son was like, hey, I want to go solar. And so as a mom, she's like, okay, well, I'm knowledgeable. I'm in the enviro kind of community. Let's kind of figure this out. And it turned out to be pretty difficult So she enlisted him, his help to get other people in the community interested so that maybe they could do like a bulk purchase, maybe if like 10 homes did at the same time, they could get like a cheaper cost. So like the 12-year-old boys going around putting flyers in people's doors, and just that whole, I'm involved now. I spent my time, I've walked up all these steps and back to do this, has made him, now she said, like, he goes around the house like turning off the lights because he doesn't want to waste his solar, like, because that's his solar, right? So
Yes.
that a little bit of investment went a long way. And I
Goes
was
a
really
long
shocked
way.
like by that. Like he didn't have to pay a cent. And
Yeah.
he was like, don't you
Yeah.
waste my solar, mom.
Right. And it's
Yeah.
interesting. The youth nowadays are so far advanced than I think I was at their age. Like I'm looking at my 12-year-old daughter. Actually, gosh, what was it? The 2016 election, like we had this whole Hillary versus Bernie Sanders, conversation, and ended up with some tears and some doors slamming, on her side because she went with me to vote, and I was like, no, just fill in that bubble right there. And she's like, I voted for Hillary. I'm like, well, in your head, I kind of voted for Bernie. Sorry, so she was really upset with mommy for a couple of days, but I loved her. But that has caused her to be very vigilant and very involved in politics. And look, I remember one day, like she'll read stuff about stocks and the NASDAQ, and I'm like, I don't even know, it's crazy how you can just give them a little crumb and they'll take it. And I used to like fuss at my dad, like my daughter, little bubble gum machines at the grocery store, you put in a quarter or, a nickel, it was this machine she always would go to at Walmart, and it was 50 cents, and she would get, this big old thing, and it took her money and it didn't give her anything, right? She didn't get anything. And so she was crying, and my dad gave her another 50 cents, did the same thing. He's like, Taylor, I'm not giving you any more money. We're losing money. He's like, this is a game. Let me explain it to you. And, I'm over here like, Dad, my daughter is crying because she just wants a toy. You want to give her a whole lesson on economics right now when she just wants a stupid toy,
This is a metaphor for the rest of your life.
Like
she didn't care about it. She wanted the toy. But now, when you talk to her now, she's talking about her savings account, how she's saving money, what she's going to invest in. She's like, Mom, can I put some money in cryptocurrency? Sure, babe.
What?
Why not?
Oh my God.
Yeah. Investing in some Dogecoin, so
wow.
Yeah, she invested like $75 last year, and
so
she's this whole thing of,
right, followed in the footsteps of a mommy CFO right there. So it sounds like
it's so crazy. She's everything like me, but nothing like me. It's she's so much more outspoken. She very much just marches to the beat of her own drum, which I love.
I love hearing that.
Yeah, and I encourage it. She went to school today. She's been in remote schools for a whole year. Like this was the first day she walked into a school because they had state testing and they're kind of staggering the students. And someone was like, she called me. She got in the car. She's like, Mom, they said I was weird. I'm like, why? She's like, because I like snakes. I'm like, really? Because you like snakes, you're weird? That's a very basic way to think. I'm like, you really gonna let somebody thinking very basically bother you? Like that's kind of how I talk to her. I'm like, no. And I'm like, a lot of these children, number one, she's taller than everybody in her class. She's taller. She's 5'5" at 12. She pats me on the head when she passes by. So I'm 5'3", and I tell her I'm still growing. But, I try to explain to her that, at this age, kids say mean things. Sometimes it's because they're insecure about something and they don't realize it. Sometimes they have stuff going on at home. And, and it's hard for them to understand at that age that people just say things, even adults.
You could not pay me to go back.
No, look, why are you raising hands? Just jump right on in.
Oh, me, right here. That's just my way of showing that I follow you, and I have that similar thing. If I put my hand like that, it means like I feel you.
Okay. I was like, no, talk. We're all a family now. Like we're family. You're all part of my village. Like,
wait,
come.
What were you saying right before I raised my hand? Because I think I did want to say something.
No, you look. I have a really bad memory. I don't
Yeah.
remember. So go ahead, please.
I don't remember either. I was gonna say something about my daughter because I haven't seen my kids in like 7 months, and so today I got the okay to see them again, and everything is just feels really um, just feels a lot better. And I was just listening to you talk about your daughter and like thinking about how funny and strange and wonderful our kids are.
They
I
are.
don't remember what I was gonna say. If it comes back to me, I'll say it.
They are the best parts of us, right? I tell my daughter she's the best part of me and the best part of her father. You know, which can be a little frustrating at times. Because she has mama's mouth. So
Lucky her.
No.
Got to be able to communicate, and it's not people aren't always going to like us when we show up as ourselves. So, but the ones that do,
true.
Those are the ones that keep close,
Yeah,
and like our family is different. It's like your friends. You could just be like, I'm not going to talk to you for a while, but your family, it's different. You know
that's
what
your
I mean?
family. Yeah, it's that the balance of teaching them how to deliver something with tact. Because kids are just blunt. They're just.
Is your daughter a Sagittarius?
Oh, I think she's an Aquarius. She's just very, very blunt, and it can come across as an attitude sometimes. And she's like, "What? I'm just stating a fact." Like my mom and her had this whole conversation about using, old school. My parents are older; they're old school. They had the whole thing about the good china. Like don't use the good china. Don't use the good plates. Those are only for special occasions. And so she went out and got some plastic cups. And my dad was like, no, I'm just going to use the regular glass cup. Like, why would I use a plastic cup? And it was just my mom actually got out a glass cup. And my dad was like, well, why aren't you using the plastic though? You said you didn't want to use. And I was like, I want no parts of this conversation. I literally just turned around because they were going at it. And, she had a point, like I try to not use plastic. Even I have these notebooks and they're really awesome. The Rocket Book. Have y'all ever heard of those? No. Reusable notebooks. Ignore my script, but literally, you can't see it. Stupid background, but they're erasable.
What?
Awesome. And it scans in. You can use the app to scan it in and you can file it away wherever you want to. They have a calendar, they have a notebook, they have it's awesome, and they're not expensive, and they have these pens and it just wipes off with a little bit of water.
Oh look, that's cool.
Yeah, it's super awesome. Oh, there's a kitty. Hold up, where's the kitty? I'm looking for the cat.
Oh, this is the fluffiest kitty I've ever seen.
Wait, there's a cat?
Yeah.
I remember something I was going to say about Congress. If we did this redistribution of funds where nobody's making more or less than anybody else, I mean, that's a traditional value. If the chief has more than anybody else, it's like disgraceful to have more than anybody. Oh my God, look at that fluffy McMuffins.
Look. Oh my goodness.
Is it Despicable Me or that little girl's like, it's so fluffy, I'm gonna die?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm low-key afraid of cats, but beautiful.
That was a cute kitty.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I have this thing where I always watch those like videos, like what is it, Dodo or whatever on Facebook, and there was this whole like montage of cats sitting on their owners' faces when they sleep, and they're trying to figure out why they can't breathe. And I'm like, see, that's why cats are evil. Hey, Taylor.
So
this is my. Look, you want to say hello, Taylor? This is my daughter. Look, we bend down. You can't. You got to bend down. You got to look up. Look that.
Hello.
Hey.
Oh no, Jack's here. Oh, okay, all right. You trying to make Jack? Okay, I got it. Okay, all right.
Oh,
we have the baby too. The baby. We're gonna get the baby on solar. He's gonna want to get a good job in solar. Say hello. See you.
Hi.
Look at that beautiful baby.
Little kiss. No.
So precious.
No,
Hi.
trying to figure out what's going on and who these people are. They're family.
Oh, that's so cute.
All right, go back with your big cousin. There you go.
Oh.
Yes, he does. He loves you. Oh, he's heavy.
Man, I need more kids.
You know, I thought I wanted one more, and then he's
Sounds
been
like
here.
a past tense thought, huh?
Yeah,
Oh.
I am. Everyone is. Everyone, including the dog, is very much sleep deprived. So,
Yeah.
I just don't understand why kids, when they wake up, just don't wake up and say what they want. Why do we have to wake up and scream and cry? I don't remember those days with her, but they happen a lot now with him, and I'm just like, someone turn it off, make it stop.
Mhm.
Use your words. Like, please use your words. Like, I will give you whatever you want. Just tell me what it is. Use you're old enough. But he's adorable, and then he grabs your neck and he hugs on you and kisses you, and then you're like, oh, I forgot why I didn't want kids. But
Yeah.
we have gotten so far off, and I know we're coming up on to like 9 o'clock hour, 10 o'clock for some people.
Oh, it's good to meet all y'all.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
hate to interrupt, but because honestly, this is the most fun on a Zoom I've had all week. But I did have a question that I really wanted to pick your brain on, because I work with transportation electrification, and so I'm working on a state level policy for specifically like electric transportation, but it will include a major workforce development piece. So Benita, I know you were talking about kind of youth and next generation jobs, and I would just love to know, like, in a dream world, what would you consider from a co-op utility perspective in like a workforce development bill, so that I can do my due diligence when I research it.
Ooh, you really just want to give me, I love when people give me this. What would I want to see? Gosh, okay, let me start. I don't even know if this is even possible. Because I think about, even with electric cooperatives now, they do have a youth program that very select few youth know about or are involved. I would love to see students from communities that are impoverished or underemployed be sponsored or receive tuition or scholarships, right? From literally elementary, and follow throughout as they matriculate through college, to give them incentive. Number one, let's say, hey, go to school, major in one of these majors, get a job in this industry, get your loans, kind of like what we do with the public servant kind of thing, let your loans be forgiven. Work in an industry that will make sure that we have a sustainable future, a green future, right? I would love to see something like that when it comes to the youth, because I think that a lot of them, and I'm going to talk from a perspective of being a Black female and looking at a lot of my brothers and sisters, number one, not wanting to go to college, so looking at a way to do vocational training that encompasses an incentive, right? If they complete a vocational training program, throw out the linesman, we have that now, what other programs we can do to give them skills and trades that are vocational, that because everyone doesn't go to college, and then give them some money to buy a house, or because what we see in these communities, they can't afford a house, they can't afford to buy a house, right? So they're living paycheck to paycheck. I'm in the process of trying to buying a house, and it's like the whole down payment issue is a problem, right? What incentives can we give to these youth so that when they are 18 and 19 and they go to college, or they say they're working in a career because they went through a vocational training and they got a certificate, what can we do to set them up for success in the future? Is that giving them money for a down payment on a house? Is that I don't know, ensuring that they have health care? Something, a combination of all of those things, because I always believe that when you take care of a person, when you take care of the entire person, right? That's the mental, the physical, the spiritual. they can create a better work product. They can contribute a lot more. They will come up with things you never thought they would. So it's kind of like when you give, I love working with kids because it's funny, I love working with kids who don't really want one right now, but whatever. You can literally sit them and give them all the freedom and give them all the juice and all the snacks and give them some Play-Doh. And you come back and they built like a mansion out of Play-Doh and sand. You're like, where did all this come from? So think if you took the same theory and gave these youth an incentive. I'll give you $25,000 for a down payment and ensure that you have a guaranteed interest rate of whatever. If you go through this training program, you get your certificate and you work in this industry. And that's the only thing I can really think about, because I think about underemployment. I think about why some of our youth get involved in things that are not so good, right? How do you get caught up in the system? I won't even go into the school to prison pipeline. I won't even, but sometimes, when people
Get
are
into it.
when their minds are idle. Well, you don't want me to get, look, it's already
No, I do.
here.
I'll
I have
be right there
all
with you.
types of thoughts about the school to prison pipeline.
Oh man.
It's awful.
I think though
but-
it's also important to note that like it is a majority that don't go to college. So when you're writing into this bill that like, you want to do vocational training in your high schools and they can complete that towards their degree too, so that maybe they're even ready right out of that like you're then writing something in that's going to affect most people, not just some little sliver of a population, So I think people forget because we just put so much stress on the college thing. Like
we do.
It's not even the majority of people. Like
right. College, there's so many other things that you can do without going to college. Not that I'm against it. I went to college. I have a master's, got all the debt to go with it. Right. But to think if I would have been presented another opportunity back in the day, I probably would have taken it. Right. Because now I'm looking back like, why didn't I just go to the local HBCU here and go to school for free? And now I'm over here with all the student loan debt, trying to make my resume look better, trying to make sure that I have, just something to make my resume stand out, you are literally standing behind me. That is really creepy. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
Taylor, you know what? Come here, Taylor. I was gonna let you ask my daughter and see what she said. Since
I really love what you're talking about, like, helping the whole person, right? Because it's funny that you say like, if I would have had the opportunity, maybe I would have done HVAC. Like the joke in my family. So like my family was all plumbers. Like my father was like a third generation, like union plumber. And so when I had the opportunity in college or in high school to be like, do you want to do this vocational thing? He was like, oh my God, absolutely not. You are going to college, right? Because that was like a really friggin' hard job that you don't want your kids to do, right? So if we want people to do these jobs, they can't kill you in the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So thinking of workforce development beyond the workforce, but developing whole and happy members of society. So
that's a really good point. I think that the internal review boards for research, they make sure that, because with like informed consent and then other things, that you have that the people that you do your research on for those like purposes of further helping humanity, they make sure that you don't have anything in there that will hurt, that they can get hurt doing. But then again, there's like certain things that could be dangerous, like if you're going to research police work, right, and you're doing ride-alongs. I mean, as a researcher, your protections are also can also be limited. So yeah,
I really appreciate that question, actually. Just thinking about the youth, and I think about so many people, even in my own family, who are hard workers, who just needed a hand, not a handout, just someone just to hold their hand, to guide them, to let them know that school, college isn't the only option, right?
And
To
maybe
know
like
that,
sometimes just like an incremental, like you don't have to have immediate gratification for some kind of goal, but you know how sometimes apprenticeships are like long, you know, if you come out of vocational school, I think it's like 5 years to apprentice as an electrician. So some kind of incremental, like, I don't know if it would be loan forgiveness or if, because that, I don't know if that applies there, but like health insurance or stipend to stay, or, you know, some
Mhm.
people are doing, like some states are like, if you relocate here, you get the bonus. Maybe if you stay here, you get a bonus or something. But like that
Mhm.
idea of a 5-year apprenticeship to in the future earn more money is like, well, what do I do now? Like just break even. So, you know, how can you even things that have a pipeline to get to a job, how can we make
Mhm.
them have some kind of more incremental, like, hey, here's an incentive to stay for the rest of
Yeah.
that 5 year and to stay here to
I
do
got
it.
a good idea. We're about to incentivize, like you think about how the American dream is basically like, if you look back in history, the American dream is about 70K a year, and no more, no less, really, because any more can create excess spending, which can create unhappiness, and any less can create poverty. And so, what about like incentivize Congress to like pass a bill that puts people in the driver's seat with that like guarantee their 70K a year, and actually be able to tap into that as they're approaching and moving through school, moving through their education,
Mhm.
like Benita was saying about
Mhm.
being able to get a house and be able to. I mean, I can just speak from being when my parents divorced, I went to the street at like 15, 16 years old, and so I'm
Mhm.
40 years old now, and I'm still like paid month to month, you know.
Mhm.
So anyway,
It's like a guaranteed basic income. I feel like
yeah,
so
Yeah.
many other countries do this so naturally. It's like
oh man,
some
yep.
kind
Yeah.
of like what the lowest and highest paying can only be, you know, like 4 to 6 times the amount. So it's a very smaller range of incomes than what we have right now.
Yeah.
So that whole idea seems to be actually in practice in places, just
Not here.
not here.
It should be. Think
Oh,
about, if we actually did have, and I think about universal health care. For me, like, and I was sharing with some people before,
yes.
some others joined the call. I have multiple sclerosis. It's been 16 years, but
Mhm.
I was freshman in college when I first had my first relapse. Just woke up, couldn't move. But also meant that because there was something that had not been diagnosed, I had a pre-existing condition, so I couldn't get health insurance, right? So,
Yeah.
back in the day, you know, MS disease modifying drugs, or can be up to 30,000 a month. I did one that was 500,000 a year for 5 days.
Mhm.
I'm on one now that's 70,000 for 4 hours, literally. Um, and so
Wow.
I incurred a lot of medical debt
Mhm.
just on the fact that I had a pre-existing condition. Um, and I can't even, I think about life insurance. I can't get life insurance because I have MS. I cannot, I can get term life, right? How does that benefit my daughter? How does that help her in the chance that I pass away? I think
Mhm.
about those type
Yeah.
of things. And I would, so if we were to think about the whole person, which is why people are like, well, why did you go 360 when I was setting up my nonprofit? And I was very particular in saying 365 because advocacy and this work should be done 365 days a year. But when you look at the work that we do, we are approaching the whole person,
Mhm.
mental, physically, spiritually. If that means mental health, if that means having them get access to free healthcare, or just doctors, just quality doctors. I could share some stories with you about my own journey with MS, where I've literally had doctors discharge me from the hospital. I had been there like 2 weeks, just kind of worsening, couldn't eat, couldn't walk, couldn't bathe myself. And I had a white man come in with 7 residents and tell me one of the very first patients I treated had MS. And um, there's no point in me treating you. We're just delaying the inevitable. You're going to be disabled. so I'm not going to treat you. And he discharged me at a point to, and I could not even stand up. And I think about the people who do not have the support system that I do, like with my father. Whenever I get sick, my parents, they block out. Like, it's my parents and my uncles, they are there. And I think about people who don't have that type of support, who don't have health insurance, who don't have a father they can call on. They're like, Dad, I need help to pay this medical bill to get this MRI. My MRIs are like $18,000 a year. And now I'm at the point where I have to be completely sedated because they take so long. Like, literally, general anesthesia, tube down my throat, waking up in recovery kind of situation. So if I had my way when it comes to giving someone incentives to be involved in this work, to get some type of vocational training or go to college and major in something that could contribute to sustainability of our environment, of our future, I would want to treat them life insurance, health insurance, down payment on houses, the things that we need on a daily basis that some of us spend so much time worrying about that we don't have the time to truly sit down and think of a way to make true change in our communities. And to think if we took away all those other obstacles that people are facing, I truly believe that would even help with the crime rate, right? We have people who, honestly, sometimes crimes are committed because, and this is not all, right? Some people are trying to get by. They're like, I got to find a way to bring food to my family. I got to find a way to get this. And they're going to shoplift, and they're going to steal, or they're going to rob somebody. Think about if they didn't have to do that to get what they needed to support their family.
Adaptation to crime. Yep. Because of lack of good work and meaningful work within the system.
Yep. And then we treat them like animals, and then it I very much believe, even with slavery, there's this whole thing where they say it's in our DNA. The trauma from slavery is in the DNA of African Americans. And I very much believe that. My grandfather and people like to think that slavery wasn't that far away. They say it was a long time ago. I wasn't a part of that. My grandfather was a product of slavery. His mother was raped by the slave owner. So, his mother was a slave, and my grandfather was there most of my life. He passed away about 5 or 6 years ago. He was actually a part of the troop that was on the D-Day invasion on Normandy Beach, the troop that marched across the mountains with no shoes on. My grandfather gave so much to, this country. He got shot. He, died with the bullet in his leg, years ago. They could not remove it. But to think that when he came back to the United States, he was still just another Black man. And when he retired, he was actually making, when he was working, he didn't come back to work for a tar plant. He was making $17 a month with 9 kids. No retirement, no benefits from the Army. And I always try to bring that into perspective when I talk to anybody. Right. Because I even have people, of the Black and brown community who grew up privileged. Your skin color is one thing, but sometimes your money can get you further in life, right, than your skin tone. So I try to tell people that may not be your reality, but it's a reality of so many people. And now it's more so of a class issue, right? We have people who are poor of all different races, all different genders. It doesn't matter anymore. If you're poor, you're poor. You got a bad hand. It's like playing spades. You got nothing but like twos. And every type you got twos. You can't win a book. You can't win a book to save your life. And it's really, really sad. And I love having these conversations, you guys. So if you need to go and you're like, oh, but I don't want to go there. Like literally, my father and I, my brother, we all were literally, we sit down with people and we have very open, honest conversations with people. That's the way to reach true healing, right? That's the way to change the narrative and the perception that people have of certain groups of people. Because if you can understand the why and the how, then you can understand, you can truly relate and realize this, there's still a person here. They got dealt a bad hand and they did what they did to survive. Some people are just, and on the other hand, some people are just bad people. We cannot change that. We cannot negate that fact. Some people are just awful people, right? But some people are just dealt bad hands, and they could be black, they could be white, they could be part of the Latinx community. It doesn't really matter. They're just dealt a bad hand, and they're doing what they can to do to get by. And so being able, if gosh, that program would be awesome. Can we please get that in place? Can we
Right, everywhere.
can we give people like guaranteed income, guaranteed life insurance, down payment on their house? Like, can we work on that so people can actually like work on other things to make our quality of life better?
I will look into that. I'm in a law class right now. I was taking federal Indian law and policy last time, and I know a lot of attorneys and judges, they don't have any concept of federal Indian law, when really that actually would help to decriminalize human beings. Because like you were saying, you know, like I'm a criminal justice major, Native American Studies criminal justice major. And like you were saying about like race, they talk about like race being just a construct of skin color and how we have a blind justice system, right? But it's not. Maybe it was meant to be or something like that. But yeah, but they basically like they categorized people. Like you said, it's a class thing, and if you're like poor and white, you're in the black category. That's like crime and poverty, and it's just like redlining in the redlining, the housing crisis. You know.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is whoever is going to go back and listen to this recording, they're going to be like, "Well, I thought this session was about this."
I mean, we got it all in there.
But you know, to make it tie it all
We have
back
Jill's
together.
slideshow. We're set.
Yeah, but to tie
Share
it, you
the
know,
slides. But it's all connected.
Yeah,
Much
it
slides,
is
by the way.
connected. Huh? Oh, her slides.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I
feel
bookmarked
free.
it. Yeah, no,
Use
they're
them.
bookmarked. It's okay. I'm gonna be. You're gonna get an email from me. I'm gonna be like, look, Jill, come talk to this white man.
Yeah, no, we got a lot more slides too. Like,
Yeah,
and we can
they
make
don't talk to
stuff.
me.
Yeah, no, I mean, they probably won't even talk to a girl, so we'll figure it out. We'll
No,
find
you
some
have a
other
better
guy.
chance than I do. I mean, you know, we're
Especially
trying
if I pull out like a southern accent, if I let slip in, you know.
Yeah, you know, but they're all most of the board members here are very old.
Yes, you know, I went to all those NRECA conferences. We must have been at the same one this past right before the pandemic hit, like in the spring of last year.
Were you there?
Yeah, I always go to the NRECA ones, and it's the oldest people I've ever seen in my life. And
It's just to
some
see
of
old
them,
white people.
they
You
have
just see
these
like a whole bunch of
tags.
dust.
Yes, and you know, like the tags, like they all wear to show their associations, like which co-op they're in. Sometimes I'll walk by a booth, and I was like, with the utility booth, they run a PACE programs, and so I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to, you know, get people to come and talk and just say hi to people. And it happened more than one time where I'm like, hi, you know, what co-op are you with? And the old man goes, and has to read it because he doesn't remember what co-op he's with, and he's like a voting member, you know.
Yeah.
So it's
These are the people making the decisions for the community.
yeah, he's like on the board. So it's just it's very old. And there was a moment that made me cry in that spring, like I don't forget which month it is, like New Orleans, NREC, yeah, the NRECA conference. Curtis was giving this speech because it's the second year of his term, so it's going to be his last speech.
His
He's up
keynote
on
one.
Yes, his big.
I have to say,
in the huge, it was the worst. I like cried because I was so excited for it at first. You know, I'm thinking like, what a moment. You know, like Holmes has probably written part of this speech. It's probably fire because Curtis has added stuff in it, and like Marshall Cherry's up on the screen in a video, and they're showing like what Roanoke is doing. They're also showing the business case to like, I don't know, 12, 20,000 white people in a room. Like it's a huge room of white people and all their wives and like, you know, family, like it's big. And right before it, like literally right before Curtis gets up on stage, they had the little co-op representative, the little kids. And well, I guess they were like high school, but to me they seemed like little or whatever. And there's this one kid that like sang about the values of country songs or something, and how everybody should
Yeah.
learn from country songs. And I was
I have
about
it
to
on
gag.
video. I have it. I can share it with
I
you.
was like, but the whole room's the point here is that the whole room is capable of applauding, because I saw it. Because when those kids sang, they all stood up and they
Stood
gave
up.
that kid a standing O, and he was really not good.
He
Like
couldn't
he
even
admitted,
sing. Honestly, he could not. He would
he
not have
admitted,
made it on.
yes, he's like,
He would have been
I'm
on the
not a good
blooper
singer.
reel of American Idol or
But
any
they
of those
did
shows.
this.
So
and
you think
then
you can
as
sing? Oh
soon-
no, what's that? The
as
voice.
soon- well, he would not have gotten through. But as
At
soon
all.
as Curtis speaks, the end of his speech, which again, this is like the best speech I've ever seen anyone in the co-op world give, because it was actually relevant, and it was like they really save money, and like look at what we've been able to do, like fantastic kind of stuff. The whole room, people
Crickets.
were walking out, and
Crickets.
nobody was clapping. So you
Yeah.
tell me why, like, the first and only Black man on the NRECA board got that kind of response when a little kid who can't sing got a standing O minutes before. Like,
It was so
it
bad.
was
And
the
I'm so
worst.
glad that you noticed that, Jill, because when we got back, we were like, did anybody see that? Did anybody else notice
Oh my
what the heck
God.
just happened?
And
But
I think I
his,
felt it just like this was their moment, like we would all wish we could be people like Curtis and Marshall, right? Superstars like that who can be on the board and the president of NRECA and give a big keynote speech like that. And to be in that moment of your life, to be received like that is just like, oh, it hurt. It hurt so bad. I
it
was like,
hurt. And he gives so much. The one thing you can say about people who work, some people who work with the community, they give so much of themselves. And you can tell Curtis is one of those people. He gives so much of himself to his work and his community. And to think that you're in a room of people that you're trying to guide to live up to the principles, the 7 cooperative
Yes.
principles, to live up to their true potential of what Electric Cooperative could do, could be, could give back to the community. And people are walking out. People are on their phones, they're talking, they're not engaged. It was really, really, really sad